this talk is about taking the corporate out of corporate venturing. Because I could talk about what's most important, strategic versus financial returns. I could talk about direct investments and indirect investments. And actually at Philips Healthcare, we invested as an LP in a fund. So I could share all this information with you, but you know already. Or you heard about it. So I want to do something different, and taking the corporate out of corporate venturing, we did this, and we looked at many companies in the world, but we focused on the United States first. And when you do that, when you take corporate out of corporate venturing, the league table of most active and best corporate venturers would be this. And some of them are the usual suspects, like Alphabet, Google, and Salesforce, that you can also see in Jim's power list and rankings. But some other names are completely new. So you would find Amazon, Facebook, Under Armour, which is a sports brand, shoes and sports apparel in the United States, Netflix, Tesla, and then number 8, 9, it's either Apple or G. They are kind of very close to each other. That's what you do when you take corporate out of corporate venturing. Now, why is this different? What do they do when we talk about corporate venturing? Because now we show you the league table, and this is actually the last slide, right? Because this would be the conclusion. But what they do, they use corporate venturing to become or remain a 21st century company. And many companies out there are 20th century companies. They are old. They are the dinosaurs. They cannot move fast, and they do everything they can to reorganize, to become agile and more innovative, and to get some of the startup spirit again. Some of them actually, more than 100 years old companies, they just make statements that we want to become a startup company again, which is difficult to do when you have 100 years, like, right, when you are 100 years old. But what they do, they use corporate venturing, and as I will show you, they focus on product, people, process to either remain a 21st century company or when they are a 20th century company to become one. And the interesting thing is, they try to deal with the corporate attitude, because corporate attitude, as we hear this morning, is also not good. When you have, as a corporation, are going to act as a real corporate, you're going to lose consumers, you're going to lose talent. And look at Uber and Lyft. They had a problem in Texas. They started to act very corporate, and on blogs and social media, they are killed. Many of the millennials don't want to use them anymore, so that's a problem. Twitter, the same thing. They are going down because they start acting as a corporate. So they have to uncorporate in order to remain relevant. And some of these companies that I showed you use corporate venturing strategies to do that. So that's number one. Number two is they use corporate strategies to deal with the corporate challenges that we all know. We have hyper-competitive global markets. We heard about that this morning. We have a lot of disruptive technology, so the product cycles are really short, innovation cycles are really fast. They also deal with the automation, so these are the real challenges of corporations, and also with environmental sustainability and the huge anti-corporate sentiment that we see right now. And I have Leonardo DiCaprio there because when he won the Oscars, one of the first things he said, it's the corporations that made me travel all the way south to find snow. And that's the anti-corporate sentiment that was picked up in social media, and many people hate corporates for that. You don't want Leonardo to travel south, right? And other actors do the same thing. And then, of course, we have the business complexity and regulation that when you grow, it becomes all more complex. You have to deal with more rules and regulations, and corporate venture can actually help there as well, so that your company remains young and agile. And this brings me to the last thing that they do. They use corporate venturing strategies to retain and attract talent. Now, this is from Netflix. They have this on a slideshow that they shared with the world. When your company becomes when your company grows, company becomes more complex, but talent doesn't like complex companies. Because all of a sudden you have bureaucracy and red tape, and they're going to leave. So talent is going down. So the percentage of high-performance employees in your company is going down, but the company becomes more complex. And then you have this gap, and that's chaos. And in order to deal with chaos, you have to attract really talent, high-performance people. And that's what corporate venturing strategies can do as well. So they can make sure that the talent that you attract is actually growing faster than the growth of the company. If you can do that, you are a winner. Okay? So, and this also deals, they use corporate venturing strategies to deal with the not invented here syndrome. Because that was one of the questions, how can you deal with it? Well, some of these strategies that I will show you deal with the not invented here syndrome and make your employees be more open for innovations from the outside. So, what are these strategies? Sorry. This person wanted to take a picture, and I just clicked the slide, so I gave him the opportunity to take a picture. But the slides will be available anyways, I hear. So, there are 7 corporate strategies that I defined in the research that I did. First 2, well, a lot of talk about it, right? These are like the indirect and direct investments. It's either, the company invests through, as an LP, in a fund, and then, create a window to the market, or you invest directly, creating a window to the market. I call them the traditional venturing, the corporate venturing strategies. Then there are 2 more, which actually are better. And I've seen this in practice, so this is also my own experience. When you as a corporate set up an incubator or accelerator, well, the boundaries of your company, this is what you see, become more porous and more flexible. And what I find is when you set up a corporate accelerator, your own employees are going to be involved with the startups of the accelerator much more than if you just have a unit and you invest in startups. So here you see your internal employees working together with the startups, and that actually deals with the not invented here syndrome tremendously. It kind of solves it, because now they become members, they know each other, because it's all very personal. So that works really well when you want to bring the startups in your company. Another thing that you can do is co-working spaces. This is kind of a new thing that happens, and many big corporates like GE also use co-working spaces. Basically, you send your people out to startups. And it looks like this. And particularly the stairs are very comfortable, as you can see. So if your employee sits there, he has a nice overview of everything that's happening. And this gives him kind of a startup feel. So when you do this, you basically release the entrepreneurial spirit within your own employees by having them work together. And more companies are interested in this. And so there's a huge opportunity. We can make this a co-working space, right? And all the startups and everybody is very excited. I've seen it in action, and it actually works. Then, another strategy is that, and this is like the tension between your corporate M&A and corporate venturing unit, is that when you invest in a startup and you're really interested in it, and I know that most of the corporate venturing units, the companies that they invest will not be acquired by the company, but let's assume that you do, and Tencent, who was here yesterday, they do that. So they start investing, building up a stake, and then they're acquiring it. But the interesting thing is that these startups that they acquire, the founders remain with these startups, and that's unique. I've seen it myself. Whenever we acquire a startup, the founder will stay there for a couple of months and he leaves because he cannot deal with corporate again. He cannot deal with all these rules and regulations. So what they do, basically they acquire a startup, but the startup has its own identity. And when you go to their websites, they have their own rules. They actually have their own business principles. So they don't try to integrate them. They basically try to push them down. This is the Warren Buffett way. You really decentralize. And they will all be managed at a very local level. And when you do that, you basically get startups within your company. And these startups like it because they see that being acquired by you creates more opportunities than being independent. And that's unique. Because you create not a company, but an ecosystem. Your company becomes an ecosystem for startups. Examples, Facebook. Facebook acquired many companies, but all these companies still have their own identity, and the founders still run these companies, like Oculus or WhatsApp, or the WhatsApp guy gets another position within Facebook. So Mark Zuckerberg, and you look at Facebook and the whole way of communication, and communication was mentioned, well, they create this ecosystem which is fantastic for startups. If you have a startup, well, you want to be part of the Facebook ecosystem. Other example, Tencent was here, so I put it there. So Tencent built up a stake in a company called Riot Games, and now they completely control it. But when you go to the website, well, the employees of Riot Games are still Rioteers. So they're not Tencenters, Doesn't sound right, by the way. 10 centers doesn't sound good. But rioteers sound really good. These people, and they attract talent as well. So it's not only that the founders are there, they also attract talent. So these companies can grow, and I believe that Tencent will be a winner of the future because of the way they deal with corporate venturing. So that's like another corporate venturing strategy. And the best company out there that really understands how to do it is Amazon. So Amazon acquired a company called Jungly, and Mike George was there as one of their talents and engineers, and now he's running many of the innovations within Amazon. Amazon acquired Zappos, and Zappos still has its own identity. The interesting thing is that Zappos, in order to retain talent, they have a quit-to-pay principle. So whenever you work really well, you get your assessment. They say, man, you outperformed, you really did well. Here you have an offer to quit. That's what they do, pay to quit. But please do not accept the offer, that's what it says. And then they want you to really think whether this company is still relevant and meaningful to you. Now, this principle, invented by a startup, is now also accepted or integrated with Amazon. So here you see the other way around. It's not Amazon integrating a startup, it's Amazon taking a best idea from a startup, integrating it in its own organization to remain relevant. So I really love this fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, fifth strategy. The sixth one is in-house incubator. Here you see your employees not as employee, but the employees are entrepreneurs themselves. And you offer money to your employees to start their own company. And the most recent example is Google, Google's Area 120, where they invest in employees to start their own business. And that's the 20% of the time that you work at Google, you should work on your own ideas to make Google better and also yourself better. So yeah, this is one of the things that really builds like the entrepreneurial spirit within the company. And of course, these guys will work with outsiders, so the non-invented here syndrome is basically disappears when you do this. Now the last part, and that's the seventh strategy, is when you are able, and I mentioned it already, to really make your company an ecosystem. So it's not a corporate with a corporate venturing unit. No, the corporate venturing strategies create an ecosystem and make the boundaries of the companies fluid and porous. And examples are Netflix. When you look at Netflix, the employees are real entrepreneurs. They are free. There's a lot of freedom within Netflix, hardly any rules. No dress code because they expect you not to come to work naked. It's exactly what they write. They know that you're not going to do that. They will be surprised if you do, by the way. So the values are really simple, creating an inside entrepreneurial culture, but also outside, creating a culture outside your company that's very entrepreneurial. So the boundaries between your company's ecosystem and the community's ecosystem are slowly but surely disappearing. To give you one example, for instance, all the stuff that we have been people were talking about this morning about, investing in education, giving back to society, contributing to community. All these things are also corporate venturing activities that are really, really powerful, particularly if you want to attract millennials. Now, one example that I put here is Sagamore Ventures. This is a Under Armour. Under Armour's founder, Kevin Plank, has his own fund, and he's investing in all kinds of startups from wine, whiskey, etc. in the Baltimore region in order to make Baltimore more attractive. And by doing that, making Under Armour, which has its headquarters in Baltimore, also more attractive. And this is very, very powerful. And incorporates Under Armour. And I love Under Armour. I should buy shares because I make a lot of, I basically sell their shoes to you. I should not do that. I should sell lamps because I'm Philips Lighting. So that's Sagamore Ventures. Now, what corporate venturing ecosystem is doing then is basically focusing on three things. The 3 Ps: product, people, process. And just because I have 5 minutes left, show you the power of these things. First, again, Under Armour. Under Armour, just focus on this part. So Under Armour sells sport, shoes, but it's not a shoe. It's more than that. It's an experience that you buy. And their marketing and their branding is very fabulous. But also what they did is they acquired 3 startups with applications that tracks your sports activities. By attracting them, basically, but keeping them still independent, similar to what Amazon did, they created synergies. And right now, Amazon has a community of more than 160 million people, active users of these 3 applications. And because of these startup guys actually start working together, these applications become stronger, attracting even more people. So here you see how powerful corporate venturing can be if you look at all these 7 strategies that I mentioned, just by focusing on the product. Then people. Well, millennials were mentioned. This is what millennials look like. When you Google millennials, you see this. And I'm not even close to them, so yes, I'm not a millennial. And the millennials, well, they don't want to work for a corporate. They want to work in an environment where the best idea wins. So it's the best idea wins culture. There's a lot of freedom and responsibility, and it should be an uncorporate environment. And with the strategy I mentioned, is exactly what you create. You create an environment where these people want to work, and they work on assignments, and when they like it, they work on the next assignment, and when they leave, you still have connections with them. Everything becomes very fluid in this new organization. Last thing is then the process, the last P. And the process, well, it's flat hierarchy, visionary leadership, it's open communication and the fluidity that I mentioned. And what actually happens is that many of these startups that were acquired by, for instance, Amazon or Under Armour, but also Tesla, this is a Tesla logo, they do the same thing, very flat organizations. And the startups, many of these entrepreneurs that they acquired, they get very important roles within this fluid organization, and they call them, for instance, within Amazon, bar raisers, or within Under Armour, the engines. So these guys get key roles, making the ecosystem even bigger. And then all of a sudden, you have a fantastic organization. So, just to conclude, what corporate venturing is doing, what we focus on, and also what I focus on in my research, is basically the traditional corporate venturing, where you make investments through a unit, or you become an LP in a fund. But I think it's time, and I think the gentleman over here was actually absolutely right, to rethink the name corporate venturing. And he had another name, maybe that's right, I don't know. But it should not be corporate. It should be about venturing, because then you use corporate venturing basically to uncorporate. And I talked about the 21st century and the 20th century firm. This is the 20th century firm. Very, a lot of hierarchy, seniority, no best idea wins culture. This is what millennials like, the uncorporate corporation or the uncorporate firm. And I will collect more data. We'll come back to Jim and we'll give Jim the data as well so we can publish it. And hopefully next year, when we all sit here again in London, I can show you that I was right. So this is what we should adopt. If you have more questions, let me know. Thank you very much.